Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Easy Conversations podcast, a podcast about having easy conversations. I'm your host, Furkan Dandia. In this week's episode, I welcome Beau Payne. And what I love about this podcast and this episode specifically is being able to have the opportunity to have guests like Beau that inspire me personally and by sharing their stories. And Beau is someone who had a tumultuous upbringing, riddled with familial and substance abuse. Beau entered adulthood with no aim or direction. And from city to city, Beau was merely focused on one thing: when and where he could get his next fix. And that fix often came from drugs, alcohol, or surface level relationships. And that's something we can all relate to. But after 10 plus years behind walls and razor wire, away from loved ones and society, Beau was finally forced to sit with and confront his past pain. Lucky for him, there were a few key people to help him with the truth. That despite our past mistakes, there is understanding, a hope that offers a new season. Hope beyond a hope that brings purpose to our pain. As a U.S. Army infantry veteran with the 101st Airborne and a former MLB draft pick by the Florida Marlins, Beau has known the heights of athletic success and the trenches of serving his country. I'm super grateful for how Beau shared his journey through life in this episode and how he's decided to make a change and turn his life around. In this episode, Beau also talks about taking the time to heal and repair relationships that were impacted by his past. Now, Beau has been able to repair with his family, including his children. And he's also sharing his story with others and inspiring them. So I really hope you can get a lot out of this episode. And if at the end, if you could leave a 5-star review, I would truly appreciate it. All right, Beau, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for joining and giving me the opportunity to have this conversation today. I'm super grateful and I'm really excited about this conversation we're going to have today. Before we get started, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and maybe talk about what it is that you do, and we'll kind of get into the topic of conversation today.
Yeah, thanks Ken for having me. I really appreciate it. Glad we got a chance to finally get this thing going. So my name is Beau Payne. I live in Boise, Idaho, which for your listeners is about 7 hours southeast of Seattle, Washington, a few hours north of Salt Lake City. So we're kind of desert area, but I like it. You know, it's kind of strange weather, really hot in the winter, 110 in the winter, 40 Celsius,
Yeah.
and very, very cold, or I mean, in the summer, and very, very cold in the winter. But yeah, it's where I live and I enjoy it. So my story is not unlike a lot of other people. I'm a recovering alcoholic and substance abuser, just about 6 years clean and sober now. I got sober in 2016. So, you know, God willing, a few more days or a few more 24 hours at a time, and I'll have 6 years. And you know, I've gone through a lot in my life, and I've overcome a lot. And I like to think of my story as kind of a redemption story. And I like to tell my story to anybody who will listen. I work with a lot of guys in recovery, a lot of newcomers, because I was once a newcomer and understand how it is. And as far as what I do, unfortunately, over the years, I spent a lot of time in jails and in prisons and penitentiaries as well due to my abuse, drug abuse and alcohol abuse, almost 10 years, as a matter of fact. But I've been out a handful of years and have really changed my outlook on life and just dedicated my life to myself, staying sober, helping other guys get clean and sober. And there's a lot of stuff kind of that's coming to fruition at the end of the year. I have a lot of speaking engagements that I do, a lot of really neat stuff. So I've kind of made a little career out of it, kind of, or burgeoning, I guess, or blooming, so to speak. Yeah. So that's always nice too. You know, we have to support ourselves, and if we can do something that we love to do, help other people make a living doing it, to support ourselves and our family, man, it's just a win-win. So I'm very grateful to be here. Just grateful to meet people like you, be on the show, meet, like-minded people that want to really be positive and move forward in life. And yeah, so that's kind of what's going on these days.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I guess part of this podcast, what I like to understand from people like yourself is, at what point do you make that decision that, okay, I've been making these choices up to this point. Now I need to do something different. And I'm always curious to understand that. So in your case, what was that moment like when you decided, okay, whatever I've been doing is not working and I need to do something different here?
That's such a fantastic question, because there's always that pinnacle, moment of clarity, I guess. And
Yeah.
for me, it was a series of things that led up to it, over the years. I first tried to get sober in 1996. Like I said, I finally got sober, one day at a time in 2016. So I always knew that I had a problem with alcohol, other substances, drugs, what have you. But I just wasn't quite willing to admit that I don't have any control over this stuff. I mean, I knew, yeah, sure, I'm powerless. When I drink, I can't stop. But when somebody tried to tell me that my life's become unmanageable because of this stuff, I'm like, no, get out of here, man. I can manage my own life. Thank you. I don't need your help. As I'm lying in some back alley in a pile of puke, for the 18th day in a row, or back in jail, and then maybe back on my way to the penitentiary, or to do 2 or 3 years. They started piling up. Being an absentee father, broken promises to my son and daughter, broken promises to my family, not having relationships with my mother, people that I truly, truly love in my life. And the one person I neglected the most was myself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And I just, this sounds so cliche, but I just got sick and tired of just being exhausted, lying all the time, keeping up with what I told that person. And hopefully that person doesn't talk to this person and find out the lies that I told to that person. And it just became a game of just being absolutely exhausted and trying to stay drunk and high every day, because I was far years past the point of enjoying any of it. I needed it to stay alive and to not shake. I shook in the mornings, until I could get pills and alcohol down my throat. And I just said, enough's enough. I pray a lot, and I have a really I don't really have one. I have an unshakable faith. And I'm from the camp of, I do work a 12-step program, but I am from the camp, people in sobriety, of like my recovery tent is all inclusive. I don't push my way of recovery on people. I welcome anybody, whatever's working for you, and have at it. I mean, don't mean you personally. I mean, just whoever's in recovery, whatever you believe in, whatever faith, if you do or you don't, man, if it's working for you, have at it. And what I can do is share what works for me and my experience and hope, and then hopefully somebody can glean from then. So that's the long answer. I'm sorry for that. The short answer is, I got so tired of hurting people. And I got tired of having just such low self-esteem and shame and guilt, and just seeing the wreckage that I've caused so many people in my life, including myself too. And I'm not, I have talent to do things, and I was just wasting it away. And I kind of grew up, and it just became a big giant embarrassment in my life, the person that I've become. So I decided enough's enough, and started emulating people that I knew that had gone down a similar road that I had gone.
Yeah.
And I tried to get rid of this ego telling me in my head that I know everything and I can do everything on my own will. I had to say, well, where did that get me? The last, 2.5 decades or whatever. And it got me nowhere. Like, it's the stuff I was just telling you. So I just gave in, man. I started doing some suggestions, and, almost 6 years later, life was wonderful. So.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I take out of that, and as you mentioned, faith, is finding meaning in whatever we're doing, whether it's our purpose in life, but there's a greater meaning beyond that, right? And one of the things I wanted to explore, there's 2 key things here. First of all, I wanted to understand, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity dig deep. I'm assuming you have, but what was it that you were trying to numb, like with all the abuse and all of that? Like, what was it that you were trying to run away from?
Another fantastic question. And these are so important to people that, that have struggled terribly with substances and alcohol. So it's kind of a nuanced answer I'm going to give you, because there's not exactly one reason why, but so I had a terribly violent and dysfunctional childhood. My father was a Vietnam veteran, came back. I wasn't born yet. Came back in 70 to the States, to the US, and we were living in Tennessee at the time. And anyways, and then we ended up moving to Vancouver, BC. So I've lived a lot of years in Canada as well. And I know you're in Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm in Calgary, so very close. Yeah.
Oh, in Calgary. Okay, you're right there in Alberta, right next door. Cool. Yeah. I broke my leg skiing in Banff, Alberta when I was 9 years old. It was terrible. That's off topic. So, well, I'm sorry, to ask me again what you were saying.
Oh yeah, you were explaining how your father.
Yes. So So I always had this real just terrible state of anxiety as a kid, and crippling fear, and just being scared all the time, and that bled into the way I felt about myself. That bled into never thinking that I fit in anywhere. That led into hating myself. I was suicidal at a young age. I didn't try at a young age, but I always had these thoughts of, I just want to die. How can I kill myself? How can I get killed? How can I just not be on this earth?
Yeah.
So fast forward, when I was 11 or 12, I found alcohol. And when I first started drinking my first beer or two or whatever, it was a terrible night. It ended up being terrible because I threw up everywhere and I was sick, and I was a 12-year-old kid or whatever I was, 11 or 12. But the funny thing is that the way it made me feel was the biggest escape from all of that hatred and violence in my household, and all that terrible way that I felt about myself. I felt funny. I felt like I fit in. I felt like I was better looking. I felt like I was a better athlete. I felt like people wanted to be around me and hear my jokes or whatever. All the stuff. I walk with my head up, and I could talk to girls, and even at a young age, and then, juxtapose that against the way that I felt in, I'm going to say, real life without the booze. I walked with my head down. I was timid. I was scared. I was never confident in the way I spoke. I just nothing. I just lived in a constant state of fear and crippling anxiety. And so when I found that alcohol, man, it was a game changer. It just made me Superman. So that's one part of the reason that I drank and started using drugs heavily, is the escapism. And then I got to be honest, being an alcoholic and a recovering drug addict, I liked the way it made me feel, man. I think a lot of people skip over this and they just go straight to the abuse and what we escape. And yes, we escape a lot of things, and a lot of people have terrible trauma that this stuff, temporarily helps deal with.
Right.
It certainly doesn't address any root issues. It numbs it, like you were saying. But then I just realized that I liked the way it made me feel, man. And anything I could do to alter my state of mind, I was all in at the time. So those are the two main reasons why I started. And then my body is alcoholic and my mind is alcoholic. So it's just like, when I start drinking, I just can't stop, man. And that's for a long other discussion. But so yeah, that's how I just got more, deeper and deeper and deeper into things. And there was a lot of abuse, other kind of abuse going on outside of my family, involving me as well. So
yeah. No, thanks again for sharing that. And I think based on what you mentioned, like the alcohol basically became a crutch. And that's something you basically carried on until you were ready to make that change in your life. And one of the things I've experienced or noticed is quite often we're not willing to make a change in our life, because that means we either have to take responsibility and we have to accept that, there's something we need to change. And there's obviously a lot of uncertainty that comes with that. And there's fear and there's shame, because we're accepting the fact that we are responsible for whatever choices we're making. What was that kind of your experience too that held you back until you were truly ready to make a change in your life?
100%. So a few minutes ago, you asked me kind of what was the moment, I
Yeah.
guess, the big moment that so when I realized, and I'll answer that a little bit more in detail here, just kind of add on to that. When I realized that, yes, I've gone through a lot, and I've been a victim, and this, in my past. But when I realized that my past is the past, and I can't change what happened, and if I'm going to live in that victimhood state, then I'm screwed, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to sit and feel woe is me and sorry for my life, and if you had my life, you drink too, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, grow up, man.
Yeah.
You're not the only one that this has happened to. You're not the first. You're not going to be the last. Start helping some people and stop feeling sorry for yourself and deal with today, the present, man. Deal with where your feet are right now. And I'm not minimizing the things that happen to children, especially, because I personally have gone through some horrific stuff. But having said that, I chose to go, one of two ways. And for a long time, I chose to go the victimhood route. Like, I understand, and I'm not knocking being a victim because people are victimized, but the longer we live in that mentality, the harder it is to ever escape those chains, or metaphorical chains, so to speak. And so I finally just was like, dude, no more. I refuse to be a victim. I never, ever, ever again, as long as I live, will let my past, my successes and my failures, or what happened to me or what I've gone through, define who I am. And when I adopted that attitude, it was just, everything changed, man. It allowed me to get a new start on things. So so that's kind of how I feel about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I agree with you. I think, most people experience terrible things in childhood, and often we're not in control of that, and we can have compassion for that. But to your point, as you grow older, you have to take responsibility for who you want to become, not who you were. But there's also an aspect of, I believe, that when we're stuck in that victimhood, we'll self-sabotage so we can reaffirm that story we've been telling ourselves our whole lives. And, we talked about this offline, but, you were drafted in, you had the opportunity to play Major League Baseball. Do you feel like a lot of the choices you made at that point also led you to feel like, okay, well, you know what, this is just who I am. These things continue to happen to me, and it gave you an excuse to continue the abuse? If you don't mind sharing that story as well.
No, I don't mind at all. And you hit the nail right on the head. So, excuse me. So I kind of, again, adopted an attitude of, if I don't play, I can't lose. And I don't mean physically playing the game, but if I don't give everything that I have to something, then I'll always have an excuse if I fail. I can always say, well, yeah, but I didn't really try. So if I tried, boy, I would have done really well. But because I was so afraid of failure, because one of the things in my household was, growing up, even if I threw a no-hitter, or if I went 4 for I apologize, excuse me, I'm coughing. I went 4 or 5 with a couple home runs and a couple doubles, but I struck out in my 5th at bat. A, I would get physically beat, but B, even worse all the time, was, you're an embarrassment. You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed our family. You embarrassed me. This is coming from my father, and all this stuff. And I'm just thinking, man, I just this old man just gave me the MVP trophy of some tournament, meaningless tournament. And I'm embarrassing you, and you're sitting here beating my butt and all this stuff, and kicking, throw me around, and man, I spit on and kicked and punched and all this stuff. It's just like craziness. And so it took away all my confidence. And to be a good athlete as you get older, you need to have extreme confidence, almost borderline arrogance. And I can't stand arrogance as a quality, as a human quality. And I was very arrogant for a long time, and that was to cover up my insecurities about myself. I didn't want you to find out who I really was. And that was a timid, scared, little insecure kid, and not, and I'm 6'4", 215 pounds, and not a big, strong athlete, which, I can portray on the outside. but on the inside, I was just dying, and so I had no confidence. I was scared to fail. I drank all the time. I literally was drunk, like, I don't want to say 24/7 when I passed out, but I mean, I was a gutter drunk, and I turned into a gutter junkie too. And I would go days for a can where I'd have a start, start a game, and I'd throw a 93, 94 miles an hour on the radar. Scouts are like, boom, this kid is lighting it up. He's mowing down batters. This is the guy 2 or 3 years ago we saw as a senior in high school, and he was going to go in the first or second round. And this is not the kid who already has a criminal record now. He's 19. He's had surgeries, and he reeks like. And then so fast forward 5 days or 6 days when it's my turn to start again. I've been drinking all week. Heavy drinking. I'm unshaved, I'm just bad looking. I look terrible. My eyes are bloodshot. My body language is awful. My arm hurts I always had arm troubles because I was out of shape. And I'm topping out at 83 miles an hour on the radar gun. And scouts are looking at themselves now saying, what the hell's going on with this dude? He's just throwing low to mid 90s 6 days ago, and now he looks like he just was drinking for 5 days straight, and he can't even touch 83 on the radar gun. And that was the truth.
Yeah.
And word just started spreading that I could not be counted on. The surgery started happening. I've had 5 rotator cuff surgeries. The fluctuations in my behavior, not being able to be responsible about anything, not training properly, not eating properly, not being able to perform on the field up to my abilities. And I still had a couple teams take small chances on me. Like I said, a couple offers from the Brewers organization and the Rangers organization, and I was drafted by the Florida Marlins organization. But the last time I was drafted, it was a really late round. It was in the 71st round. and I think they offered me, I don't know, like $3,000. One of these mesh trucker Snap-on Florida Marlins hats. It was so ridiculous. And I'm not knocking them for being ridiculous. Yeah. I'm just thinking of just how far I fell, from literally 3 years, a projected first or second round pick. And that's, back in 1990, 91, that's $250,000 signing bonus right there, to just an afterthought, just some team drafted me so I can take up space for a few months to, until they release me, because they don't have any investment in me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't have any mental skills, and I didn't have any discipline, and I had, and back to that real quick, back to that arrogance thing. Athletes do have to be arrogant to a point. That's the only kind of place where I really kind of condone arrogance in society, because really it's just ugly. It's a turn off, a little arrogant. But you have to have that. I'm that really competitive. I'm going to kick your butt, man, when I'm between the lines, and that makes you better. And I didn't have any of that. I just had no self-confidence. I had no physical abilities left anymore. I was just a walking shell of what I once was, and alcohol and drugs pretty much washed me up by then.
Yeah. So I think going back to the question, like, you put yourself in a situation where you could tell yourself that, you know what, I'm basically living out what I kind of thought I was, and it just gave you more of an excuse to continue to drink and use drugs, right? Yeah. So one of the things I noticed on your profile, like, you've been able to repair the relationship you have with your children. What was that like? If you don't mind sharing a little bit.
Oh boy, no, I don't mind sharing at all. First, let me preface this by saying it's a work in progress. But I do have a relationship with both my children. My son will be 26 in August. He lives in Nashville, or just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. He's a photographer. He has a wonderful mother who we have been friends with together, his mom and I, for, ever since our son was born, for 25 years. We've always remained friends. And she's been one of the very few people that have kind of stayed with me and encouraged me throughout kind of all my BS, I guess, throughout the years. My daughter, helped raise my daughter. I was really involved in her life, as compared to my son, not so much, because we were on different sides of the country. But they both hurt for a long time, losing them out of my life. But it's 100% my fault. I continue to change. I was never violent or abusive or anything like that. But when I say I continued a pattern of just general dysfunctionality, I want to say, because I never ever laid a hand or yelled and screamed, and any of that kind of stuff that went on in my own household. But again, there was dysfunctionality, and as far as my children not having a father growing up, or maybe having a stepdad who wasn't their blood father, and being confused. Why is my dad around sometimes? Why is he not? Why is he in jail? Or why is he in prison? Or why did he just say, sure, I'm going to buy you an iPhone, and then I'm waiting in the mail, and it never shows. It's like, oh, dad's in jail again, stuff like that. So I really wrecked my relationship with my children for a long time. 100% culpability goes to me. And so repairing it, I had to be patient. I realized, and this is another thing that I came to too, is that when I decided, no more victimhood, no more BS mentality, it was a whole collaboration of things, I guess, if you will, that I needed to change about my life. One of those things for Ken was that I can't demand things on my own time. I can't say, I want this, I want it now because this is what I want. I mean, that's just the height of selfishness, self-centeredness, egocentric BS behavior. And I had to be patient, and I prayed a lot. I prayed every night. I prayed for a long, long time. Now I pray just for, I still did, but now, for my kids, I just pray for health and happiness. But my main prayer for a long time was, God, please just soften my children's heart towards me, and in your time, please let them come back. And like I said, I'm not pushing faith on anyone in this program. This is just about my experience. Strong faith in my higher power, and slowly but surely things started to happen. But I had to do the work. I had to get myself better. I had to, my cup was not even just full, but overflowing, so that when I could pour into somebody else's cup, I still have enough left for me to continue to improve and do the things that I needed to do. And I think that they saw that I was doing things better. They have different moms, but they had heard their moms maybe, or through, maybe on social media, or, just heard that, dad's doing a lot better, and, he's going to jail in a handful of years, and he's not back in prison, and he's really making a difference and trying his best. And they both reached out to me and expressed a desire to repair the relationship. And it's been good, but it's been slow. And again, would I like to have everything back? Like my kids say, I love you every day, Dad, and this and that, and please come, yes, but that's not the case. But the case is that I have to be patient, and this is not a sprint. And I don't want to really say a lot about my daughter, what she said, but I'll say one thing that was really important to me. It made a lot of sense. She's like, Dad, I feel like I don't even know you anymore. She's been gone for so long, and she's like, I love you, and I want to repair this relationship, but it's going to take time. And she's like, I forgive you, and I'm not mad at you, but I just have to live my life. And and she's married, and she says, and you're not out of my, I want a relationship, but it's just gonna be slow and deliberate, and that's okay, because that's kind of the way that I put my life back together too, is not wanting everything like that. Not saying, okay, I want my life back. I want money. I want a girlfriend. I want a house to live in. I want a new car. I want a shiny, fancy this and that. No, it's like I really had to humble myself. And I still do today. I just live one day at a time, and take, as long as I'm handling my side of the street, man, and doing what I know is the right thing, things work out. They just do. And like I said, real quick, it's not a perfect relationship with my kids, but it is a relationship, and it's not unhealthy. It's not dysfunctional. And it's getting better day by day. So I'm super, super grateful for that. So.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I think the biggest thing you pointed out is the ability to let go of control. Excuse me. Yeah, so I think the biggest piece there is understanding that, as you mentioned, you're going to do the best you can, and everything else is outside of your control, and showing your kids that you're willing to make a change, and being patient with the process. And I think that's part of your own healing too, is being able to put yourself in a position where you can repair with especially all the most important relationships that probably fell apart over the years.
Absolutely. I'd talk about relationships real quick. I had a dear friend. He passed away a few years ago, but he went to the United States Naval Academy. He was a Marine Corps officer in Vietnam, an older gentleman. And he was kind of a mentor to me for a lot of years, and was a very strong, just man of just good everything, and always believed in me, and would hurt his heart when I would go back to jail or go to prison, go away for a few years or this. But he would always say, it's like, and then this is a man who had actual wealth, he was vice president of Idaho Power, which is, it's high as in Canada, hydro.
Yeah.
So did very well for himself financially, and had nice things or whatever. It's fine. But he would always say, look, Beau, life is not about how many zeros are in your bank account. Life is not about what kind of car is sitting in your garage. Life is not about that stuff. He says, sure, you want to do well so you can take care of yourself and take care of your family. But ultimately, when they put you in the ground, the legacy that you want to be left or you want to leave is how you treated people and the relationships that you had with people. Relationships, and I stress that. Life is about the relationships that you make, new relationship, me meeting you and vice versa, and having a nice chat. And when we're done here, leaving that thing, man, that was a good experience, and that was fun, and I'm glad I got to meet Furkan, and and this and that, and I just had a total change of mindset, man, about what my priorities were in life, and today I've got a core group of friends, not a lot, maybe 4 max, that are my close friends.
Yeah.
But I don't need, and I've got a bunch of acquaintances and people that I guess I call friends. But my core group of guys, 3 or 4 guys that I can call anytime, day of the night, day of the time of the day, and they'll stop what they're doing and pick the phone up, and I'll do it vice versa for them too.
Yeah.
Is very nice and comforting. And I used to be a guy who had 1 million acquaintances but no friends. And 999,999 out of those million would probably talk bad about me behind my back.
Yeah.
because I deserved it, because of the things I did, and it's not that way anymore. And I don't feel this need to have 1 million friends and to be liked by, sure, I like to be liked, and I'm sure you do, and we all like to be appreciated or liked in our, but it's not a thing where I wake up in the morning and go, gosh, I hope so-and-so doesn't hate me, or I hope I can gain some more friends today. And on your show, or not maybe it was on your show, or maybe on your Instagram page, you talked about the comparison.
Yeah, that was on my Instagram.
I commented on it on your Instagram, and I love that. Was such a great post you made, and I think I commented on it, and I said, man, I played that comparison game for years, and it just kept, and I think I used the word it kept me in turmoil, but it really kept me in, literally, well, not literally, but, metaphorical chains, man. It just kept me from being able to be myself, because I always had this feeling inside that I didn't care for myself. And I was always comparing myself, my insides to everybody's outsides, thinking, oh, wow, they look so good, or they look so put together, and they speak so well, and oh, look at all these friends they have. And they have a nice car, and just their interactions with people seems so effortless, and just everything seems perfect. And then there's me, little old me, just wanting to bury my head in the sand, because I just hated myself so much, and I just felt like I didn't fit in anywhere, and I didn't, and it was like that for a long time. And when anyone asked me today, what's the greatest thing that you've gotten out of your sobriety? And, they expect me to say, like, oh, well, my health is better, or, I'm not burning down houses, or whatever. I'm not going to jail anymore. And no, the greatest thing that I've gotten out of my sobriety over the past, 6 years or so is to feel comfortable in my own skin. And I think that's what we all want at a young age, starting with children. I think so many of us don't feel comfortable in our own skin as children, as young adults, as older adults. And I went almost, I'll be 49 then in a couple months, and I went 40 plus decades feeling that way, or 4 plus decades feeling that way. And now to be able to express myself and to help others and feel confident and comfortable enough in my own skin to be able to tell my story, And to see the effect that it has on people, it just gives me more impetus and more ammunition to keep going and going. And I feel like I've just been reborn, years ago. And it's a wonderful feeling. Caveat to that, had to do the work.
Yeah.
Had to do some deep work on myself, had to make a lot of amends to people, had to really get honest with myself and get to the root of a lot of problems that I had. So it doesn't just happen like that. I just don't wake up and say, please change me and make my life great. And it happens. It didn't happen like that for me whatsoever. Yeah. But I became willing to do the work. And when I became willing to change and realized that I had a problem and I was just killing everything and everyone in my life, metaphorically, things started to get better. It was just an awakening.
For sure. And it's so important that you mentioned that, because you think about it, if you've got 40 plus years of a certain way of being programmed, it's going to take a lot of work to reprogram yourself, right? And people often get discouraged or frustrated when, they make mistakes. And I often too, I've also been on a journey of working on myself, and occasionally I'm going to make mistakes and fall back to my old patterns. And those are the moments where I need to have compassion for myself and take those mistakes as learning moments rather than shaming and guilt, having guilt over how I showed up, knowing that I'm still a work in progress. And the other piece that I wanted to highlight that you mentioned so important is, we often get caught up in not being able to accept ourselves because of how we were as children or how we were treated. So then, we're trying to build relationships based on how we look or the things we have. And the most important thing is, how are we treating others? How are we making others feel? And that's the most important thing when it comes to relationships.
100%, man. It's like I take stock in my life, and I realized that I was the guy that's like, oh God, here comes Beau. God, everyone, I don't want to be around him. He's just not. He puts out a bad vibe. He's got terrible energy. He's always negative. He talks behind people's backs. He's just, nothing's ever positive about him. I don't want to be remembered that way. I want to be remembered as like, oh man, let's go ask him, because maybe he knows, maybe he can help, or let's invite him to this party or gathering or whatever. He's a nice guy to be around, and he makes people feel good about themselves. And I lived for so long, feeling terrible about myself. So I empathize when people don't feel good about themselves completely. That's not the case for me anymore. For the most part, I think we're human. And like you said, we have down days, and we, kind of go into like, I don't feel great, or whatever. But for the most part, I feel great about the things that I do today. And I feel good and comfortable in my own skin. And I desperately want other people to feel that way too. And the reason that I do is because I know how lonely it is to feel like you don't fit in, or everybody has friends and I don't have friends, or it's just a terrible space to be lonely and sad and have no hope. And it just sucks, man. It just sucks all the way around. And if I can help somebody get out of that and realize that they have value and self-worth, and if they have a purpose on this life, and to help others and to be the best they can, the best versions of themselves, then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do my best trying, so that's really what I love to do the most today is to kind of share with people that there is a way out. You don't have to be stuck in the sand, your head in the sand, you don't have to feel so downtrodden and beat down. And it's just, life just becomes a trudge, man. And trudge is not a bad word. Trudge actually means to walk with purpose. But I mean, life can become a drag, real quick when you feel like the whole world is against you. And I don't want to feel that way ever again. I don't want other people to feel that way too.
No, it's so important. And this is what I love about doing this podcast, is hearing people's stories where, they take adversity or whatever they went through, and then they find meaning in that, but then they want to be able to help others through the same thing. And that's what I love about your story and others that have come on this podcast. It's so amazing to see. And, I think it's that mindset shift we need to have, like you mentioned, when we start looking at things like life is happening for us, not to us. That's when we can actually start looking at things differently too, and not feeling like victims. There's I truly believe there's an opportunity in any situation in our life. We just need to be able to look at it
Yeah,
from a different angle sometimes.
100%. And I call that for Ken something called, I call it just flipping the script, man.
Yeah.
Just flip the script, look at it through a new pair of glasses. Let's
Yeah.
get a different pair of lenses on and let's check out a different way of different perspective on things. And when I do that, I truly believe that too. I'm right there with you that, I've learned to have gratitude through the worst of situations
Mm-hmm.
because maybe when we're stuck in it at the moment, why is this happening? But in my experience, as I was able to distance myself from that crazy life that I used to live and look back on things, I had a lot of aha moments like, okay, I understand why that happened the way it did,
Mm-hmm.
and when that happened at that time frame, and why it happened like that. When I was stuck in the moment, I'm like, why is this happening? Why? I was always why? You know, and my mom, God bless her, we reconnected after 14 years because she told me, son, you have to leave my life. I love you. You're my firstborn son, and I'll always love you, but you're killing me with your behavior thing. And now we're best friends. We talk, a few times a week. We visit. She lives in Colorado, and we tell each other, I love you and this and that. But my mom, God bless her, she's 77 and she's gone through 3 cancers and a lot of other stuff, and is a tough lady, extremely educated. Both my parents have graduate degrees from really good schools in the U.S.
Yeah.
I have a GED, which, I'm a high school dropout, and I got a GED from a state penitentiary in Idaho. So I always kind of joke about that. But my mom says we live in the what is, not the what if.
Yeah.
And I always think about that, and it's so simple but so profound at the same time. Just she's like, oh, we live in the what is, not the what if. If I'll ever say something to her like, Mom, I'm sorry, but she's like, sorry, apologize to me. It made immense to me. Let's live for today. We live in the what is, not the what if. And I think about that every single day. And that helps me stay grounded and present and patient,
Yeah.
And as long as I'm doing the things that I need to do that I know are the right ways of living, I unequivocally know that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I'm gonna definitely keep that in mind as well. And I know you've touched on it, but just to kind of bring it to a close, just for people that are either on a similar journey like yourself or who want to get there, what are some things that you are doing now to keep yourself on track on this new path you've carved for yourself?
Absolutely. So balance and balance, balance and consistency in my life are they're kings. um, I get up on time, simple stuff, and I don't want people to think that, oh, this is nothing, but truly establishing a positive routine in life for myself has been paramount. And the little things, if I can do the little details for Ken, then the big stuff will take care of itself. And I'm not making light of things, but simple things like not sleeping until 11 a.m. Getting to bed at a decent hour, not staying up till three in the morning watching Netflix all night and eating ice cream, sitting in bed or whatever. I get up on time. I try to live each day with purpose and intent, and that doesn't mean that I'm some kind of saint and live a perfect life, because I certainly don't. I'm active. I'm physically active. I've had a ton of surgeries, my back, 5 shoulder surgeries, and a bunch of other stuff, and I'm actually having an open heart surgery next year because I've got some nasty heart disease going on. But these are all things that happen to us. And I've learned to be like, okay, well, we'll just fight through it and stay positive. So I live a life of purpose and intent, whether it's, if I'm in the weight room, it's every rep is done correctly with proper form. I think that that's metaphorical for the way that we live life. Let's live with proper form. Let's make our bed in the morning to get a good start, leave the bed messy. Well, we're going to have a messy day. That's not how I want to start my day. This may sound simple, but to me, these little things, eating right as best I can, making sure that I don't get into arguments with people. I don't get into the debating society anymore, for lack of a better word. We all have our opinions on the state of affairs in the world, whether politics or this and that, and I do too. I'm human, and I'm a citizen of the world. So I have my opinion on things, but there's a way to broach that stuff, or there's a time and place for it, and I don't feel the need to just interject my opinion into everything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time in my life where I had to butt into everyone's conversation. I had to tell everyone, no, you're wrong. I'm right. You need to hear what I have to say. Well, I'm just not that important, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. And so that's been a big thing for me, is just to just let stuff like that go. Like even stuff that in the past would make me seethe with anger and contempt. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
even involve myself in it, man.
For
And
sure.
just walk on by. Don't get involved in that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's in the past, that was my ego needing to be fed, because I felt so bad about myself. I'm like, well, man, I need to tell these people what's wrong and right so I can feel good about myself. Well, I feel good about just myself the way I am, and I'm making the daily improvements, and I don't feel the need to, butt into everyone else's conversations and tell them what's wrong or right. So little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
A big mindset change, though,
Yeah.
from eating well, from taking care of myself physically, to minding my own business, to having a mindset of I want to serve people. I think service is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And not just to say, oh, some kind of saint, or Mother Teresa, not that kind, but just doing things to help people.
Yeah.
And I found that when I can get in service to other people, I'm helping myself, man, because I'm out of my own head. I'm making self-improvement at the same time, and it's just a win-win for everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just I a real strong faith. I keep my side of the street clean, for the most part,
Yeah.
and I do my best to help other people. And when I can do that, that's a full day, man. I can look
Mm-hmm.
myself in the mirror at night when I go to bed and say, okay, do I need to make improvements? Yes, I always have to make improvements, but they're not like huge, massive things that I did wrong. They're things that I can continue to build on, that I've already made improvements on.
Yeah.
And it's just a win-win for society, honestly, that I'm not out there being a scourge and being a criminal and all this
Yeah.
just embarrassing stuff, to be quite honest.
For
So,
sure. For sure. Yeah. No, what I
a life
appreciate
of
about,
intention.
yeah, no, what I
Oh,
appreciate
sorry.
what I appreciate about what you shared there is that, first of all, you've been able to give yourself that assurance and validation that you no longer seek it out in others. And there's so much power that comes from that when we're able to give it to ourselves. Otherwise, we're constantly searching for it externally. And that's where we give up our power. And the other piece is the service piece. I agree with you. It's so important, where we all have gifts that we come into this world with, and to be able to share that with other people, again, is a gift in itself, and it makes us feel like we are living our life with purpose. So it's so important that you mentioned those two things, because that's what allows us to live that life of purpose and find meaning in everything we do.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I lived forever with no purpose at all. My purpose was me. Me. I had the purpose of me. I should write a book on the purpose of me. Like it's all about me. I'm the hell with all you guys. It's all about me. And it's just I cringe even right now talking to you. I cringe thinking about that. It just makes me want to vomit, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so far from my mindset now of that type of living, because I think that I just grew up, man, and it took me a long time. But once we've had this kind of, I call it a spiritual awakening,
Yeah.
in my kind of circle, and I really have had like a mental and physical and an emotional and spiritual awakening. And I look back, and it's, again, the word is cringe. It's just
Mm-hmm.
cringeworthy. Always thinking about myself over others. Always taking. I took. And if I couldn't get it, I'd manipulate it for me, or I would try to, and this and that. And it's just, man, it's just such a, it was like living in the dark for so long. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I started to get better. I started living in the light, man, and I do every day, and it just keeps getting infinitely better. But I've got to stay grounded, and I do.
Mm.
I do things on a daily basis that keeps me available to my fellow man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Flat
No.
out. I don't make it. Yeah, and I don't make a big. I'm not a big deal about things guy anymore. And I went from being like everything was so melodramatic with me, and everything was so the sky's falling, and woe is just everything was just this giant overblown embellishment of life. And nowadays, like the only thing I really take serious is my recovery. Because, and that may sound, it's not, because when I take, excuse me, my recovery serious as I do, then everything else falls into place. And I'm just not going to stress over life anymore, because, and my life is far from perfect. You know, I have everyday struggles like we all do, you know,
Yeah.
External and internal, but they are not even close to what they once were. And it's because I just I put on a different pair of glasses and flipped the script, and so to speak, you know, and said, man, I'm going to check out the other perspective on things, and I haven't looked back. So
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Beau, I just want to be, I'm super grateful for, you know, how gracious you've been with your time. And I'm really inspired by the journey you're on. So, you know, I really appreciate everything you shared. And, you know, I wish you the best, and the impact you're making is going to be profound, I could tell. And, you know, thank you so much for sharing so much. And I really appreciate it. For people that want to get a hold of you or reach out to you, what are some ways they can do that, whether it's social media or online?
I would just reach out to me through Instagram is probably the best way. My Instagram handle is Sober Beau. And then you can find me on Facebook. I'm not as active on Facebook, but I do post a lot about recovery on Instagram, obviously, and just my last name is Payne, Payne. My first name is Beau, Beau. So just those two main venues. Like I said, in the not so distant future, there's a lot of neat stuff kind of happening in my life. That I'll get into, you know, at a later date. But as far as now, I'm always accessible through social media, direct messages. You know, if anyone ever has a problem about drinking, or, you know, I talk to all kinds of guys. You know, folks, let them know, you know, just my experience. You know, I get DMs all the time, and my boss just saying, hey, I so appreciate that post you made, man. I was, you know, and I got one from London the other day, and I'll share this real quick. This gal said, my son read your post. We've been trying to get him into rehab for 3 years now. He's addicted to heroin. And he read your post, and currently right now he's sitting in inpatient treatment. So that right there, and I get that all the time. That's not a pat on the back, look at me thing. That just keeps me going. That's like, wow, man, that is so just pure awesomeness. That we people can have that effect on other people, you know. And so why would I want to stop doing stuff like that? So yeah, so I'm accessible any way you can, and I'll always lend an ear to somebody.
No, that's amazing. Thank you again, and thanks for coming on the podcast and having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dan. Absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
That's the end of the episode. Thank you again for tuning in, and until next week.